Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. I'm going to rank all 30 Marvel movies. I was going to include the Disney Plus shows and specials, but I found it really hard to appropriately rank them. I found some are way too high and some are way too low because they feel different in the movies. I think having the extra runtime and just it seems like a little bit less of a budget kind of hurts the shows, and a lot of them are made during COVID time and had alterations to the story. It just didn't feel like a fair comparison, so I've only have all 30 theatrical releases on this list. To jump straight into it, I have very specific things I look for in a Marvel movie. There's a couple things that are always big for me: a good villain, good character moments where, yes, the plot's important, but the individual character stories and their moments as characters are more important to me than the overarching story. I still, obviously, if a story's bad, a story's bad. It's gonna hurt the movie. But individual character moments and villains are really what I look for in Marvel movies. So if there's a movie that is lower on the list, that could be part of it. But my opinion is also pretty different, I think, than most people's. Spoilers, and Age of Ultron is much higher than most people would put it. But we're going to get right into it, and we'll start for the bottom half here. So the bottom half, the bottom five movies: Incredible Hulk to Captain Marvel, 30 through 26. These movies just fundamentally didn't work for me. I think these are the only movies I would say I really don't like in the MCU. None of them work for me. The Hulk, the only thing I liked was how the Hulk actually looks and how he fights. The rest of the movie I just didn't like. I'm so happy they switched off Edward Norton. This whole movie did not work for me. Both the Thor's just, he's so serious to the point he's boring, and the movie is just kind of a mess. I mean, looking back on them, they're probably not terrible movies, but they just didn't work for me. Iron Man 3 is the worst of the Iron Mans, in my opinion, and it's not really close. I did not care for this one. I was super disappointed when I saw it when it first came out. Iron Man 2 was nothing special, but the first one was so good, and this one just didn't work for me. It's important for Tony's story. So that's why it's something that's not last, but it just wasn't for me. And then Captain Marvel felt so forced. It was had so much cool things going into it, and I knew nothing about Captain Marvel before the movie came out, so I was actually really excited for it. But it was probably the most predictable Marvel movie. Nothing surprised me in this, and it just didn't work for me in the most fundamental way. But the characters were cool in this movie, and the scrolls I found interesting, and we saw a lot of Nick Fury, so that kind of moved it up a little bit from dead last. So I was really disappointed by Captain Marvel. Moving on, the next two are both the Ant-Man movies. I think you could swap them either way around. Ant-Man has a problem for me of just not being an interesting hero, in my opinion. Just having a suit that makes you small just kind of puts you disadvantage. And these movies are just very self-contained and feel so small in this universe that they're funny and I enjoy them. I've watched them multiple times. I'll still watch them. This is the first movie where I think this is a decent movie. It's just not for me. They just feel so small and so inconsequential compared to the other movies, even if they're not technically. Because I know for before Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp was a big deal. It was how they figured everything out. But they're just that character for me that I'm just not into him. He's fine. I like it when he's on screen, but I never pick these movies out. And then moving on to the next couple ones, Iron Man 2 is just a worse Iron Man 1. They made the bird guy be the villain. He's just he likes his bird. He had potential, but they kind of ruined him for me. Eternals was just too much. I think this movie could have been good, but it was just way too long and just drawn out, and it was just too much. I don't think it's a bad movie. I think these are all from 23 up are good movies. I just don't enjoy them compared to the movies above them. Captain America: The First Avenger. I actually love this movie. I'm a big Captain America guy. I have all three shields hanging on my wall. But yeah, this one just compared to everything above it just doesn't stand up. I think this story, had it come later on in the MCU's lifespan, would have been better. And then Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness next. This movie felt like they did a lot of cool things with the Illuminati, but just killed them all. Everything they did kind of didn't matter. They undid everything, and they kind of did Wanda dirty in this, in my opinion. She's such a smart character with such a good arc from WandaVision, but then they just go back to her wanting to kill everybody after she quote learned her lesson, and then she learns it again and then kills herself. But we all know she's not dead. The movie felt weird. They handled America Chavez very funny. Like I feel like the story could have been more about her, and it felt like she was just like a tool in the story. So yeah, it was. I liked it. I think it was really interesting. There's a lot of like horror elements that I really liked. Part of this movie I loved, and part of this movie I really didn't like. Next up is Black Widow, the biggest wasted opportunity in my opinion. We could have saw the Bucharest story. We could have saw a lot of different things, but we got weird Taskmaster that's like this dude's daughter. The story is good. I really do like the movie. I love Scarlett Johansson. I love everything to do with Black Widow. I don't love Taskmaster, and it's just the movie feels like it missed what it could have been. We didn't see a lot of the old school like Black Widow stuff she did. Um, this one's probably gonna make people upset. Guardians Volume 2. I did not enjoy this movie. I thought the Peter dad relationship did not work for me. The things that save this movie and don't put it farther down is Yondu's moments and just the rest of the supporting cast. This movie is not for me. Both Guardians, for a fact, aren't as high as most people would have them. There's nothing wrong with them. I very much enjoy the Guardians in both Infinity War and Endgame. It's just Guardians 2 specifically didn't work for me, and I looked at my phone during this movie multiple times waiting for it to be over. Um, there's enough good in this movie to move it up the list, but for me, it's bottom half for sure. And then the last one in the bottom half is the original Doctor Strange. The original Doctor Strange felt like such a cool character that is relatable. And this was much higher on my list, seeing this doctor who's now struggling and has to learn through all of this. I think before on my this was probably a top 10 movie, but upon rewatching it two more times, I was very bored with this movie. It has little rewatchability in my opinion, and the more and more I watch it, the more and more I'm just like, maybe I just really liked this the first time, but it doesn't work for me as much anymore. A lot of this changes every time I rewatch the MCU. I would tell you for sure that Doctor Strange and Captain America, the first one, would be much higher. But yeah, it's one of those movies where I watch it again. I'm like, this isn't as good as I remember it being, but that's how it goes. And then after now that I've got to the bottom half, we're gonna slowly move into the top half of the list. These are the movies I think these are all great, and they're just basically down to little things which one I enjoyed more. Some of it's not fair. It's really hard to put a solo movie above an Avengers movie because you have so many characters. But we're gonna move on here. At the bottom 15 is Guardians of the Galaxy. I know a lot of people would have this higher, but I don't know what it is with Guardians for me. I don't dislike it. I enjoy the movies every time I see them, but for something about them, I'm just like, this isn't for me. Iron Man 1 is just a classic superhero movie. It's like the blueprint in my mind. This and Dark Knight are the blueprint of how to make a superhero movie. Seeing him go through his um his process of making his suit and becoming Iron Man, this is just this the blueprint for how to make a good superhero movie at this point. Spider-Man: Homecoming was definitely better than Far From Home. I think Far From Home, the Mysterio thing just didn't work on the big screen. I think they did Mysterio as best as they could do him, but you know he's going to be the bad guy, and just another movie where Marvel felt like they undid their consequences at the end in a way. Above that is Thor: Love and Thunder. I know a lot of people do not like this movie. They think it's too funny. There's no seriousness in it, but I thought the jokes landed in this movie for me. I loved Jane Foster's Thor. I loved the Mighty Thor. I'm so sad we probably won't see her again, but I loved this movie. I thought it was great. I almost put it higher, but looking what's above it, I don't think it's better than the movies above it. Moving into number 11 is Shang-Chi. He is the first original entry character in a while that I've absolutely loved. I thought this movie was great. I It could be higher, it could be a little bit lower, but I absolutely loved this movie. Number 10 is one people are probably gonna be shocked at, but I love Age of Ultron. I think this movie has. I love Ultron in this movie. I know he's not as good as he was in the comics, but what they did with him, I still enjoyed. And the character moments in this movie, there's so many small character interactions between people, and I loved it. Everyone hated the Bruce Natasha relationship. I loved it. This movie just hit for me where I know a lot of people would have this probably bottom 10. It's number 10 for me, and I think I'll stand by that any day. I'll fight. I'll die on this hill. Number 9 is the newest Marvel movie, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I thought this movie was fantastic. Top 5 villain for sure in the MCU. And I think 99% of this movie worked fantastically. It just didn't have the high points of the first Black Panther, which is actually next on the list, number 8. The first Black Panther, Chadwick and Michael B. Jordan absolutely destroyed their performances in this movie. They were fantastic. Watching this in theaters, I was locked in the entire time staring at the screen waiting to see what happens. The only thing that hurts it a little bit is that last fight. The CG was not it for me, and it felt a little bit anticlimactic, but it still worked in the movie, and it's not enough to hurt it that bad. Number 7 is The Avengers. There's not much to say about this. This is a fantastic movie. It's the first real team up movie we saw. I know there's been others in the world, but this is the first time I remember seeing 4 individual movies combined into one like this and launch the MCU for what it is today. Um, could be higher, could be lower, but I'm happy with it. It's 7. The next one is Civil War. This is basically Avengers 3, in my opinion. It's an Avengers movie with Captain America's name on it. I think it is one of the best movies, and just the amount of character play in it is insane. I absolutely love this movie. This is one of these movies where I obviously could have put it higher, but I think it falls here pretty nicely. 5, Thor Ragnarok. They reinvented Thor and it worked. This is the same Thor that will be in Thor Love and Thunder. This is what saved Thor for me. I was kind of super out on Thor, and Ragnarok. It was so good. Everything about this movie was good. It was funny, it was serious, it had great action. The movie start to finish was fantastic. There's lots of watches where I'll skip Thor 1 and 2 and just start with Ragnarok. It worked. Spider-Man No Way Home could have probably been a top 3 movie, but I do think a lot of what gives it this high of a rank is nostalgia for me. Seeing all of the Spider-Men from the Sony universe in one movie was incredible. This movie was really good all the way through. It was more than I ever expected it to be, and still on rewatching it, I absolutely love this movie. It is everything we hope for as a Spider-Man fan, and it is absolutely like the best Spider-Man movie in my opinion at this point. And then the top 3, there's 2 that were pretty obviously going to go in here, and I don't know if it's fair to compare them to the rest of the Marvel movies, because number 3 is Endgame. This has pretty much every Avenger in it. The stakes are the highest they're going to get. This movie, just by default, by what it is going to be higher than a lot of movies on this list, but they did it very well. The time travel thing kind of felt weird at the time, but it really works, and it's not really a problem, but we all kind of knew it was going to have to be time travel. So I think that's why it's so much lower than Infinity War. It's too lower than Infinity War, not that much lower, but it just it has the problem of what's going to happen, and that makes it a little bit lower on this list. My favorite standalone movie, and probably my favorite Marvel movie, but I couldn't put it above Infinity War, is Captain America Winter Soldier. This movie I've watched dozens of times. I absolutely love this movie. I think it does everything nearly perfect for a standalone movie, because none of the Marvel movies are standalone anymore. There's going to be 2 or 3 heroes in all of them. But yeah, this was the pinnacle of Marvel for me, other than the Avengers movies. Having Bucky back, having Steve's relationship with Bucky and Natasha all through this was my perfect movie, and I love it. I thought about putting it number 1, but I really can't put it above Infinity War. Infinity War is not really even an Avengers movie. It should just be Thanos' movie, and Thanos is the best villain in the MCU. As much as it hurts to say over a couple other people, but he just is, and this is his story. Seeing the Avengers actually lose in the way they lost is fantastic, and I think it's going to be really, really hard for Marvel to top this in the future. I mean, I know Kang is supposed to be the next guy, and everyone's excited about that, but I just don't know how you top this with all the people and all the characters we loved, because there's a lot of characters now in Marvel that people don't like, but everyone liked almost all of the characters when this all started. So, yeah, it's going to be tough to ever top this, but that's my number 1, and I think that's a pretty safe number 1 for most people. Now that we're through the whole list, I'll put it all on screen here, and you can look at it all next to each other. I think I'm pretty happy with this. I did 3 or 4 revisions of this. I kept swapping a couple places. Shang-Chi, I thought I was putting a little higher. Love and Thunder a little bit lower. There's a couple things I would have moved around, but I'm pretty happy with the list now. I think it's a pretty solid list. Let me know what you would change in the comments. Maybe give me your top 10 or top 5 movies. I think this is really hard to rank at this point. There's so many of them, and they're all pretty decent, barring 5 or 6. Be sure to let me know what you thought in the comments. Make sure to subscribe for more Marvel content. I'll have a lot of Call of Duty and Pokemon coming soon, and I'll see you in the next one.